Pending we're live. Hello and welcome back. I'm Randy Buehler. I'm now joined by Chris Pikula. We're getting ready to watch the match between Eric Froehlich and Bob Maher. But first, Chris, tell me about that match against Dave.
Obviously the biggest thing is I almost killed myself game one by forgetting my chalice. So I cast Revoker thinking that was automatically going to give me the kill. Got it countered, and then I could have cast Sculpting Steel on my Sphere Resistance instead.
Oh, okay. You had Sculpting Steel as the other thing.
Right, that would have locked up the game also, but I just cast the creature. Totally forget. I just hadn't played with Chalice in forever.
Sure.
I didn't, so I could have got myself killed if he had another true name.
You found a nice line with the Mutabolts and the Mishras, though, where you weren't dead on the spot to second true name.
Right, right. I figured it out so I could make myself not be dead to the second true name, right.
I mean, maybe die the next turn, but you found the right line from there. I mean, it's good to, sometimes you mess up and you just got to find the best line with the situation you're suddenly in, right?
Yeah. And then, game two, I also could have killed him game two, but I wanted to cast the juggernaut.
Sometimes that one, you got to find the best line with the situation. I didn't think that was a mistake at all. Right?
Yeah.
That one.
I'm pretty sure that he didn't. He just had Island, right? So the 2 lodestones plus the 3/3 Mutavault would have killed him. But I also don't think there's any line he had to beat me playing Juggernaut either. So I didn't think it mattered because he was a full turn away from Hurkyl's Recall. So the matchup plays out very strangely. I don't really know what to think about it.
Yeah, I mean, you're both kind of playing these mana disruption decks, so it's a little odd.
Right. I mean, his null rods are obviously way better than my null rods.
Fair.
He has Mox Sapphire and Black Lotus, and I have a lot of draws where I need the artifact mana. At least I don't have Black Lotus in my deck, so I have that over.
Yeah, his Black Lotus was terrible. There was a null rod in play.
Yeah.
That's funny.
But I don't know. I have no idea how that match would play out. I haven't played that match out before, and obviously the Nova deck is different than a regular Shops deck. But the fact that I don't have islands is just a pretty big game. But the 4 True Name Nemesis mitigates a lot of that. I think the regular Merfolk decks, like Joel Lim, I don't think he plays 4 True Name Nemesis, right? He plays 2 True Name Nemesis, same as you're running.
Yeah.
So having 4 True Name definitely changes the matchup a little. And it turns out I never drew a Tabernacle. I don't know how that plays out.
Mm-hmm.
So I did know I did know that I do not have to pay for my Darksteel Juggernaut under a Tabernacle. I don't know. I didn't know if Dave was going to know that if he Phantasmal Image the Juggernauts, that he didn't have to pay for them for the Tabernacle. That I wasn't sure if he would figure that out or not.
That's funny. Is that just because it's indestructible, so whatever, let it die?
Right. It says it doesn't say sacrifice. It says if you don't pay for it, destroy it. So.
All right. Looks like the match. All right. Looks like our match is up. So this match is going to be Eric Froehlich against Bob Maher, Merfolk against Oath. You see the game, Chris?
Yep, I'm in there.
Sweet. All right. Players start.
Close real quick because I haven't looked that closely. I know Eric because I assume it's the same as.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Eric and Dave are. I think they're card for card identical. I didn't study them, but that's my assumption. My Merfolk deck is like half a dozen cards off from theirs, but theirs, I believe, are the same. Bob Maher, meanwhile.
So,
go ahead.
Normally, I would say that I would pick Eric here because I would expect that Bob probably build a deck that he thought looked right rather than a deck from an actual vintage tournament. And I think against a deck like Merfolk, there would probably be a couple key cards that he had overlooked or something, or you know what I mean? Like there's vintage just a couple things. If you actually play vintage, you may not realize how it work or just overlook them like that. But I don't know if Merfolk actually has anything all that great against actual Oath Druid.
Well, Grafdigger's Cage is the key.
That card is pretty.
Grafdigger's Cage.
Right. Game one, no.
Yeah, game one. I mean, what happens is you have Force of Will, Right. So I actually played Bob randomly yesterday in a Vintage Daily event. And I mean, my list isn't the same as Eric's, but same idea. I did win the match. And I mean, a lot of it was like one game, you know what? He resolved Oath of Druids and I just lost. But the other two games, you know, one game I was able to force a will it. The other game was after sideboarding. And like you can disrupt Bob's mana. Like you come out with a Wasteland and a Null Rod and suddenly he can't cast anything. So I mean, that the basic mana disruption strategy of the Merfolk deck is actually decent.
Although he can get, yeah, and Griselbrand possibly can't block. I don't know how often immediately combo off Griselbrand, but
I won a game that way. I attacked to get him. Like he played the Oath. He finally got an Oath to stick, and I was able to attack him to 1. So he oaths up Griselbrand, and then just has to scoop. Right? It can come up sometimes that you just deal enough damage they can't activate Griselbrand, so they have to say go.
I never liked. Yeah,
you don't like
never liked Oath. I played it like 1 or 2 tournaments. And I've never liked it. There's a lot of cards you don't, a lot of cards you want in your opening hand in your deck. The fact that you can't play. It's hard to play Gush because you have 4 Forbidden Orchards in your deck. It's hard to play Night's Whisper because if you play Night's Whisper and then you have 4 Forbidden Orchards in your deck, you can just take a lot of damage that out of where it just doesn't. There's a lot of other things going on in Vintage that I feel like that have to be in your deck because you're really sure what you're doing. So I've never liked the deck that much. So it looks like they're going here.
Yep. Eric leads with an island.
Now, Eric only has 4 1-drops in his deck. Is that right? He doesn't have a code.
He does not have any Kosi's Tricksters. He just has the 4 Curse Catchers. In terms of creatures, I mean, he's got like a couple random things.
Oh, we forgot the 5th 1-drop. It's such a recall.
Right. Sure. I mean, he's also got, I think, 1 main deck Flusterstorm, 1 main deck Steel Sabotage. So he says go with Ancestral Recall up, just waits. He didn't do it upkeep. He waited to respond to the Black Lotus. But yeah, Eric didn't want to have to discard, so he had to shift the turn before he cast the Ancestral. Wow. Black Lotus for turn 1, Oath of Druids. Eric needs a Force of Will. Looks like he has a Force of Will. Can Bob force back? If that Oath sticks, it is really hard for Eric. But his Force of Will works. Amazing what happens when you cast Ancestral Recall on yourself, huh?
Yeah, it does make it less painful.
All right, and yeah, the rest of the Lotus mana goes to waste. Bob just ships the turn. Now here's Cavern.
We know Bob doesn't have a mana during his game because that would have gone different. He would have sacked the Misty for green.
Right. He would have sacked for blue mana instead of green.
Right.
Silvergill Adept, but an uncounterable Silvergill Adept, revealing. I didn't see, but it looks like it was a Lord of Atlantis. Bob's going to vamp as a response.
So.
Wow. Eric has the misstep for the vamp, too. Just all kinds of card advantage for the Merfolk deck. Right? He's up 2 cards from the Ancestral. He missteps the vamp. The Adept draws him an extra card. And he hasn't done any disruption of the...
It's actually advantage if he doesn't misstep the vamp.
Yeah, fair enough. Safe. I think that Oath of Druids that he would have gotten would have counted as a lot of card advantage, depending on whose system you're using to count. We can count the Black Lotus being sacked for mana too, if you really want to.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I feel like this match just totally falls around.
So the Adventure is an interesting card because it's like so bad it's a shop deck, obviously. And I had a match when I was playing with Blue decks and I was practicing for this where I've had 1 Gataxian Probe in my deck. My opening hand had a Gataxian Probe and Ancestral Recall.
Okay.
Gataxian from my opponent, he mental missteps it, and I ancestral and draw 3 cards. So anyway, if it wasn't for shop decks, because of all the mental missteps, I think I would just play 4 Gitaxian Probe in every deck, just to protect my opening hand ancestral. Because like people just want to burn the mental missteps because they're paranoid they're gonna just dive them in their hand, I guess.
Crazy.
But you can't really do that because of the shop decks. I don't know. You can't really afford to have Gitaxian Probe in your deck against them. It's really bad if you can play against a workshop deck.
That's fair.
Gitaxian Probe in your deck. Like sometimes you can't cast it at all. You can never cast it for free.
It also makes it a lot harder to mulligan a hand, right? You get a hand that's got Gitaxian Probes. You don't know what your hand is. You have no idea if it's good or not.
Yeah.
All right, Bob cycled a Time Walk. Just
Oh,
hoping
yeah.
Oath, but now it's Lord of Atlantis time. Excuse me.
Yeah. The Ogma Skull thing's pretty sweet.
Adept Crunch is over for 3. Abrupt Decay. What are you going to do? Slow the beats down as much as you can, right?
What do you think about Bob's turn 1? Like, I'm not even sure it makes. I don't know what his hand was, obviously. And I guess he wanted to have information so he could vampiric, but there's not a lot of point to going Lotus Oath of Druids. Like, you almost want the Merfolk deck to cast a creature first anyway.
Interesting.
If you're going to cast Oath. He has mana drains in his deck, and he didn't have one there, where if he waits the turn 2, you can draw a mana drain. Yeah, I don't know if. Of course, the fact that the Merfolk deck can't remove the Oath from play maybe makes that different. He can't remove it game 1, right?
Cannot remove
Or ever. Yeah, if you can't remove it, maybe you have to go for it, but I guess that's the difference. Because he can't remove it, you might as well get it into play.
Yeah, I mean, there's that though. Like you say though, Eric can just decline to play creatures. Like you would rather have him play 1 creature. And it's not like double blue. Like back in the day, double blue would be threatening, right? Eric would suddenly have counterspell mana, but they know the deck list, right? Bob knows it's just forces and missteps.
And I guess he could wait till. It'd be pretty tough.
Yeah, no Rod and Bob's thinking about it. It's not good for him. Like if he's gonna stitch something together, kind of likes to be able to tap his artifacts for mana.
I mean, 7 very probably. I mean, he only has 2 mana, so no rod means that at most he'd have 3 mana next turn. So he's almost dead on board. You know, he doesn't have a sweeper main deck, right? He doesn't have a toxic deluge. That's just a sideboard card.
Yeah. So, Curse Catcher's going to stop.
He does have a show and tell. So there are things he could do with 3 mana. But.
Well, Eric's not interested in letting him have +2. Which kind of adds a turn to the clock here. But there's a phantasmal image, so we're back to a turn 2 clock.
Yeah, this is just—it's amazing how feeble vintage decks seem if your first attempt at something awesome gets stopped.
Black Lotus into Oath of Druids. Yeah, Bob has basically been out of gas ever since.
I mean, I guess he had the Vampiric, but Vampiric is in a mental misstep world. It's very fragile. It's not you can count it. You got to play the Vampiric like that, but it's like counting it as like Plan B is I mean, Eric has it. I think 3 mental missteps main deck. 4 mental. He has 4 mental missteps main deck. So, but I mean, he got Eric ancestral and Bob didn't. So. And Bob had a Lotus, which didn't even use all the mana. Well, card just did not line up well for him this game.
Yeah, no, this is kind of how Eric wants to draw it. I mean, no wastelands, and it's not clear that Null Rod is doing anything, but the ability to just counter their first broken thing and put a clock out, I mean, that can win a lot of vintage games. You have the ability to disrupt the other guys, like you said, their first attempt to do something broken. If that doesn't work,
yeah, Bob has 2 threats. Bob had 2 threats, and he ran into Force of Will. And normally you would need the second hard counter for the second threat, but mental misstep in this case worked. So.
Yep.
But that is another thing that obviously has been helping the shops in this many games, that so many decks start with dead cards game 1. Like
Bobby seized an empty-handed Eric Froehlich and then conceded the game. Yeah, he was dead. He was just trying to see if he could get more information. Oh yeah, you don't have any cards in your hand. So game 1 goes to Eric Froehlich. I thought this matchup would favor Oath. I mean, when I haven't played a ton of it.
Yeah, but this is just so basic, it almost doesn't matter what they were playing, right? Like, the Broken deck had 2 threats. They were both countered. The creature deck had some creatures and some counter spells. Like, this could have been like Counter Sliver versus Storm. Or, it's like individual card choices mattered very little here, I feel like. So let's look at the sideboard.
Yeah.
I guess
we have the deck list.
Toxic
They have the deck
Deluge.
lists.
Toxic Deluge will come in. Possibly Echoing Truth. Abrupt Decay, Duress. I don't know. I don't know if he can fit in that many cards.
I mean, Fort Grafdigger's Cage is the most important thing that's happening here. Eric's Fort Grafdigger's Cage is just shut down the Oath of Druids plan completely. Bob is
yes, Bob has to be in the dangerous claims because it kills Null Rod and Graft.
Yeah, between Null Rod and Grafdigger's Cage, he's definitely bringing in his dangerous claims for sure. I think the Toxic Deluge is another obvious card. Basic Forest makes sense against a Wasteland deck. I don't think he gets to go with the Duresses. I mean, I don't think he can afford to squeeze that much stuff into his deck.
Between David Williams and Chris Pakula.
Eric has 4 Grafdigger's Cage.
What are you looking for in this matchup?
2 Fluster Swords, possibly?
I would
Game's
expect
up, by the way.
Merfolk to have an edge here, partially because
and Bob
True Name
leads
Nemesis
with
and just any
a
card
Underground
presence in
Sea.
general is kind of hard for stacks to deal with. Or I guess Terra Nova. I apparently upset some vintage stalwarts by calling it
Looking
stacks.
forward to
I
us getting
just
the,
can't not call a workshop deck stacks.
And
It's
cameras
really
in
hard
the
for me to
future.
do anything other than that. But,
Yeah, no, we were hoping to get those
especially week 1.
I mean it, but
I mean,
we
I
had
do
some other,
understand that
some
there's
other
no
things
actual
going on,
smoke
so we
stacks in the deck.
didn't finish getting that. But I think we've got the technology piece solved. It's just a matter of distributing out the stuff we need to you guys.
Hello and welcome.
Well, so it's Bob's turn to have the answers for recall. But Eric has a mental misstep. Bob missteps back.
Between David Williams and
Good old-fashioned counterspell stack, yeah? Bob does get his ancestral resolve.
Vintage Super League week number 2.
Well, that might change things this time around.
Here by Luis Scott Vargas, and we are getting ready for the match between David Williams and Chris Pakula.
Rainstorm with a fetch land available for Bob. He's got to be feeling a lot better about this game.
Yeah.
It's funny, I was disappointed last week to see Bob not playing with Dark Confidants. I mean, not that I expected you to play with your invitational card, but I mean, Bob, I thought maybe. Think about it, though. This is basically the deck Bob won the Pro Tour with. I mean, Bob won a Pro Tour with an Oath deck, right? Why wouldn't you go back to that well?
Yeah, for a long time, I had never played a vintage tournament without Dark Confidant in my deck since it became legal, but then I eventually tried other things. But Dark Confidant is when you have those 5 Moxes in your deck, Dark Confidant just starts to feel real easy to cast on turn 1.
Yeah.
Right. It's just a weird part of Vintage where, Meddling Mage isn't really any better in Vintage because, you have blue and white. You can't guarantee what Mox you're going to draw. But something that costs 2, like Young Pyromancer or Dark Confidant,
They get a lot better when you have random
makes it extremely strong.
Definitely.
In Vintage decks are even playing Stoneforge Mystic. I mean, really anything with the colorless casting. Yeah.
Curse Catcher Crunch is over for 1. I think Eric knows that's not good enough by itself. Now what? Second Curse Catcher with a Wasteland available. I feel like you just waste any multi you can see in the beginning of the game with these decks. I mean, unless you need the colorless mana to cast, a Silvergill Adept or a Null Rod. You just I feel like every time you activate a Wasteland, it's like you're rolling a d6, and if you roll a 6, you win the game! Hooray! It's like you may as well roll that dice, right?
Right. Although Bob already hit with the Mox and play, Bob can cast Oath, which is here we go. I was gonna say Grab Figure Cage out colorless. Here we go.
2 Curse Catchers available to defend it too.
Oh yeah.
Sweet. Stream is going live again. It's alive. Yeah, I see gray, but the chat certainly seems happy that we're back, so that's good. Welcome, guys. I will certainly do a recap. This is game 2 between Eric Froehlich and Bob Maher. Eric came out in the first game with turn 1 Ancestral Recall out of his Merfolk deck. Was able to resolve that, and then was able to force a will Bob's turn 1 Black Lotus into Oath of Druids. So that was not good for Bob. He got his Oath of Druids forced. That cost him his Lotus. He went for a Vampiric Tutor to go try to get presumably a second Oath, but that ran into a misstep. Eric was just off to the races, beating down with Merfolk. This game has started with Bob resolving in turn 1 Ancestral Recall. Mental missteps canceled each other out. Bob has also brainstormed. But Eric, as you just saw as we were getting here, Eric resolved Grafdigger's Cage, and that's really the single most important card in this matchup after sideboarding. Grafdigger's Cage single-handedly turns off, Bob's primary strategy. Suddenly all of those Oath of Druids are dead, and all those cards that are in his deck just because they work with Oath don't really do much of anything anymore. I'm going to guess this Mystical Tutor is going to go get a way to blow up a Grafdigger's Cage.
Yeah, I was just wondering, it's kind of like a really, there's nothing really busted you can do off this.
I mean, his Ancestral's already in the graveyard. He could go get Yawgmoth's Will, maybe, if he's got more mana in his hand.
Looks like he got Demonic Tutor.
Got Demonic Tutor, that's odd. I guess he wants to get an Oath? Or an Orchard.
It's possible he probably already has Nature's Claim, so he needs to get Oath.
Makes sense.
And Curse Catchers can't counterspell Oath, so he's going to just cast Oath now and Nature's Claim it on its next upkeep.
He also has Abrupt Decay that can blow up Grafdigger's Cage and do it through Curse Catchers for that matter.
Although if he tries to Nature's Claim it, Eric will just sack both Curse Catchers and then he won't Oath anyway, but it'll put him in a really good spot.
Sure.
It'll give him a lot of time.
Yeah, there is the Oath. I'm guessing we're both guessing that's what he tutored for.
Yeah, it must be. Otherwise, there's always a Mystical Tutor.
Now, if you're Eric, do you just not play any creatures? Oh, it's funny. Wasting Underground makes a lot of sense because it turns off Abrupt Decay. But he's not going to sack Curse Catchers. He's going to rely on Grafdigger's Cage. I mean, Eric could put him on Nature's Claim, could plan to sack his Curse Catchers to try to counter Nature's Claim and then not have any creatures.
Yeah, he
But
can't.
that is,
If Eric had, like, his own disenchant effects, that might work, but he's the only way he can't get off the table, so it just makes him have to draw another Grafdigger's Cage. He doesn't have Mutavaults, so
yeah,
he has to cast creatures to win.
yeah, he basically has to get a Grafdigger's Cage to stick to win. That's right. Or deal so much damage that Bob can't activate Grizzlebrand.
But the Nature's Claim right here would do it.
All right,
And there it
Nature's Claim, Grafdigger's Cage. Eric has 2 cards in his hand. Are they a Force of Will blue card? No mental misstep either. So
Bob's not going to be able to draw cards.
Bob gets to Oath. He gets Grizzlebrand. Spills a Mox and Orchard and a Library into his graveyard. Puts Grizzlebrand into play. Now what? Do you draw 7 and go down to 5? That seems kind of scary.
Curse Catcher out, you can't even. You have to draw with 2 Curse Catchers out. You have to draw 2 mana sources to be able to Time Walk.
Yeah, so you're just gonna you would pass the turn here.
I have to think about it. I have to look back. We don't know what's in the game, but it's. Of course, if he sacks a Curse Catcher, he's not dead on board. So it's actually not true, right? Although he probably has another take. Another. I'm not going to assume.
Bob plays an Orchard. Green and a red for Time Vault. Sure. Can't Curse Catcher that. He's set up. I mean, I'm not sure he has a combo finish. I think he's mostly going to get Vault Key and then just plan to attack with Grizzlebrand, ideally while also taking all the turns.
Right, so he's going to get attacked down to some low number here. Then on his turn, he's going to attack with the Grizzlebrand, then draw 7, hoping to hit Voltaic Key.
Right. Yeah, there is not a Tendrils. Yeah, there's no combo finish. He's planning to attack with Grizzlebrand. And those Curse Catchers have Island Walk, so Grizzlebrand doesn't get to block this.
Oh, right. Without another lower, the Master doesn't even have Island Walk.
Right.
There's no round, probably.
Interesting.
Right.
A Time Walk from Eric. This is kind of scary because now any larger Island Walk, and all of a sudden that is 9 power worth of Island Walkers.
Time Walk.
That is a scary Time Walk. And it resolves. Eric's got 1 card in his hand. If he can resolve a Lord of Atlantis, a Master, or make a copy of that Master. Wow, there's the Master. This is lethal. Yeah. Grizzlebrand resolved, but those Curse Catchers Island walked over for 4. If Bob can't stop this Master, and what's he going to do? It's not like he can draw 7 into Force of Will, because he'll be at 1. He wouldn't even be able to pay for the Force of Will, much less deal with the Island walking Curse Catchers.
He could Nature's Claim his own Mox Ruby.
Yeah, I mean, he obviously can't counter the Master, so he draws the 7. Eric Froehlich is going to win this game through Grizzlebrand.
I think the only card Bob could have there is Nature's Claim.
Yeah. Bob texts, well played in the chat. Eric says thanks. Eric Froehlich, 2-0 with the fish. Bob Maher falls to 0-2. Yeah, still on TGO, but I think he's just verifying that none of the 9 cards he's holding can get him out of this.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy. Yeah, there you go. Eric Froehlich wins the match.
That's pretty unbelievable how many things went in Bob's favor that game.
I know.
And he still lost. He got rid of the graphics stage. His Ancestor resolved. He gets over the table. He did not get null routed. I mean, everything went his way, and he still lost. And there were multiple, and it was a situation where he would have lost to, well, I guess the time walk was not that different than like a Lord Atlantis would have killed him last turn too, right? By giving them master style walk.
On the previous turn, no, he had to deal 12, so he needed the time walk.
I thought he was
Bob was at 12, and then Eric
Right.
hit him for 4.
You're
Time
right.
walk hit him for 9.
Right. You're right.
So, yeah, he needed the time walk. He needed a time walk and a Lord, basically. And
Or
that's
double
what he
Lord.
came up with.
No, double Lord wouldn't have done it either. Right?
Uh,
No, double Lord would have.
Double Lord does do it, but I don't think he has enough
Right.
cards. He only had 2 lands in play when
Right.
that started. All right.
Yeah.
So the plan now is I'm up. So you're in charge, Chris. Try not to crash the show or anything. I guess we've already crashed, actually. Hopefully things come back
I'll
up.
try not to
But,
distract you.
Rich Shea will get on the phone and join you to talk about the match between me and LSV.
All right, sounds good. Good luck.
All right, thanks. I'll be back after.